Aloha and welcome to Capital Connection with your host, Senator Angus McKelvey. I'm your moderator, Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. Our guest today is Senator Lynn DeCoite. Senator DeCoite represents Senate District Maui. She represents Senate District 7 on Maui, consisting of Hana, East and Upcountry Maui, Lanai, Kahoolawe, Molokai, and Molokini. Senator DeCoite was appointed by Governor David Ige on June 17, 2021, and she's doing a wonderful job in the Senate. She is the Assistant Majority Floor Leader and serves on the Energy, Economic Development and Tourism, Agriculture and Environment, and Ways and Means Committees. So now your host of Capital Connection is Senator Angus McKelvey.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Angus, good morning to you. I almost goofed on that introduction where I made her like the king of Maui there for a second.
Who? Not me. Better not.
But Senator DeCoite does represent Senate District 7.
Senator DeCoite, yeah. She's definitely high accolades for her. We'll see in the show, she's been an amazing part of everybody coming together to help support the Lahaina community during the fire.
I think she's going to talk to us, too, about some of the activities right away that occurred when Molokai residents came to support the people of Lahaina as well.
Yep.
So I think that's a very interesting story. We'll hear from her shortly. She'll be calling in about a minute or so. Is there anything? You were at a business meeting yesterday, weren't you? With
it was put on. First of all, it was organized by the Lahaina Town Action Committee. It wasn't put on by us. However, I was invited, and many of my Senate colleagues, in show of support and wanting to listen and get the real, straight thing from the community, which includes the business community, came on their own dime and time to be there to listen and to support us, myself and the Maui Senate delegation, and the community. And it's the first of many, many different meetings that the Senate will be putting on with other groups on different issues. Yesterday, the issue was small businesses, and again, it's the first of many, many meetings to try to get the discussion going on what aid can be given to the two different kinds of business from disaster: the ground zero businesses, the ones that were immediately and totally impacted by the fire itself, and then all the other businesses that are suffering secondary impacts as well. So it was a first of many meetings, and many groups were there, and so it worked out very, very well.
And I know you'll keep us informed as we make progress on subsequent meetings.
Yes, of course, for sure. And like I said, this was on with the businesses and the business community. So, but future meetings will focus on things like insurance, potential mortgage relief, benefits for FEMA individualized assistance for moving into someplace longer, and
We have the call in. Senator Lynn DeCoite is on the phone, and I will now step back so the two of you can talk to each other. Hello, Senator DeCoite. Well, she was there.
Hi, morning.
There you
Tom,
go.
How's it going? Sorry.
There she is.
Good morning. We're all working on our coffee here. Good morning to you, Senator DeCoite.
Morning, Senator McKelvey.
No, good morning, Senator DeCoite. Thank you so much for being on the show with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Oh, no. Happy to be here.
Really appreciate it. So, Senator DeCoite, I wanted to talk to you about the response to the fires. Like that morning, you, like everybody else, woke up and we're starting to hear about it. But Molokai people mobilized in a way that I've never seen growing up. Can you tell us really briefly from your experience from Molokai side, how the people, after hearing about how they responded and what the efforts were to try to assist from our community, from your community?
So of course, Angus, as you know, our thoughts and prayers continue to go out to the people of Maui. Like Lahaina, Molokai is small, close, tight-knit families and friends that have ties, always going back and forth by boat. It was an island-wide effort by the people of Molokai. As you know, they've become very resilient. So waking up to that, I reached out to the families and friends of Molokai to see how we could get supplies to Maui. We always are coming in by boat, and many of us know the families there. So we reached out by boats, worked with the planes, They never hesitated. I mean, the store owners on Molokai even called. What do they need? How can we get them there? We knew we had challenges to get them there, so many of the brothers and sisters rose up, loaded gas.
Oh, yeah.
You name it, gas, supplies, food.
Yep. I
Everything
saw them charging
that
it. I
was
was up at Kapalua Airport trying to, make the most of that one tiny half a bar of cell signal. You could see them charging across the channel like full, like a full flotilla. And I got to tell you, it was a sight. It was very hopeful, encouraging sign to see that. It was very awe-inspiring to see that happening.
So I was grateful and proud. When the challenge arises and stuff like this happen, you see that not just from Molokai, but many of our islands across the state just have that kind of passion and respect in time of need, and that's just who we are.
Yeah, and it really showed up big time because of the fact that it showed up big time because of the fact that you could see it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go right to where the people are at the Takana boat ramp, at Estern, Takana Poly. The harbors were closed; it didn't matter. We're going to go ahead and still get stuff there and create this chain of bringing supplies in. Even by swimming them in, I heard at Takana Poly. They were doing that.
The call out was, they needed gas. A lot of them just didn't have gas. Everything was closed. I mean, the store owners on Molokai was just saying, hey, what else they need? Do we send it from Honolulu? So, I mean, we took the stuff off the shelves at that point and said, hey, just give them to the boats. And even the boats, they didn't even, we tried to pay for the gas. And they're like, no, we're just going to go. Don't even worry about it. We want to do this. So, I'm so grateful to them.
It made a huge critical first difference in that first morning, that first day. So I want to just acknowledge that and thank you and the people of Molokai for stepping up on not waiting for a press conference, just going right away and helping.
Well, then, as you know, you asked for the outreach through the airports. I got to tell you, Mokulele and Kamaka was awesome. I mean, we got things that planes could land directly into Kapalua to help. I mean, with the bigger airlines and spearheaded by Hawaiian Airlines, Blaine Miyasato with all the partner airlines, we could get the stuff into Kahului, but we couldn't get them fast enough into Kapalua. So Mokulele and the owner of Kamaka, Jim guys, were like, what do you need? And then they also offered to take people out free of charge. We sent things as you asked for them, and it was like, what do you need? What else do you need?
That was really critical. Yeah, between you getting the stuff in, we had private pilots coming from Molokai. We had the helicopters, Hawaii, flying people, stuff in, but then people out. It's never an empty load, and we were running things out of the Kapalua airport, just trying to coordinate. But because you were able to do what Senator Richards on your end to get the things over. We were able to just get them to the pods that we're setting up. The community was putting together. So and it also gave people, especially younger people who were helping, something to do, to be a part of the relief.
We even had the little kids. I mean, some of us took our families, our kids down. As you know, the capital donation drive that we worked together, you, myself, Senator Agaran, of course, many of our colleagues. That capital donation drive was huge because, it was asked, hey, what can we do to help? I mean, being government officials, as you know, we have to sometimes work outside of government to make sure we can get stuff. I mean, at one point, many of our colleagues, we weren't there. We're just trying to get things over to Maui. Many of our colleagues across the aisle was there.
You guys were there in those critical first
crazy.
Hours. I mean, yourself, Senator Richards, Senator Dela Cruz, others, and to be able to get messaging out to you guys and have you being able to help get us the things we need, to respond was critical. And I thank you guys so much, and for that, because
you don't have to.
Whether it was Senator Richards organizing the insulin to be brought in from Kona side with private pilots, people of Molokai helping us get the situation with Homeland Security fixed so the ferry could run again. I mean, that was all of that stuff was. But to your point, it's like, even though we're in government, sometimes we saw with the community in this thing, the community just got to go, and we'll figure it out. But we just got to make something happen. I think that was I don't know, what I felt between us and our colleagues in trying those first couple days, the first day, and trying to get relief and supplies and communication back to everybody.
Senator,
The Capitol Drive we talked about, and thank you, your staff, and our staff. They worked countless of hours with DAGs and others. I mean, can you tell us a brief about that, and what was raised? How are we? You've been working with CNHA and the Lieutenant Governor's office on how to be strategic with the relief supplies coming in. How did that go with the Capitol Drive, and how are we able to accommodate the kinds of things that were coming into Maui with those?
So the Capitol Drive was so huge. I mean, at one point we had like 800 volunteers alongside our staffs, many of our colleagues. I mean, as you know, Senate President was huge support. His staff, everybody was there. We saw so much intake, reached out to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and she has now coordinated that with CNHA. As we built that distribution line with the airlines, the former Lieutenant Governor Shansui played a huge role with boots on the ground doing setups. But, it was trying to make sure that we're in it for the long haul and that we find storage facilities. So as Maui calls for these supplies are really readily available. Working with the different pods to make sure they get supply when they need it. So, we've been in constant...
And that system that you guys have set up has been very important, strategically important, but also the strategic... I want to give you props for the strategic thing of trying to, keep as much of these supply assets on island as we can, because as we've seen with the Honopi'ilani Highway, all it will take is a piece of rebar and a truck hitting it to close that highway off again. And that's why I've also stressed that it'll constantly be there. Be seen as a lifeline airport now. We need to put way more resources into it, because if that happens, especially when they're taking out the hazardous materials, then we're cut off again. And so that's why I appreciate what you and Lieutenant Governor CNHA were doing, is strategically trying to place as much of the supplies that were donated in Maui to help for, like you said, in the future. I mean, we're going to have, unfortunately, there could be more issues down the road, and we could need the community to be resupplied.
So we have
yesterday
for Maui.
We went. The Liontown Action Committee invited yourself and myself, and many of our Senate colleagues came, as well as other governor and everybody else, to start the first of many, many conversations with the business community. Can you kind of give us a brief update on what was discussed and what is being looked at insofar as how businesses can be assisted, especially the ground zero businesses that were vaporized on Front Street?
So of course, LEC reached out, and like I say, we don't go in unless being invited to come in, and it was specific towards businesses. And there will be many other meetings as people want to focus on an individual subject matter versus having to listen to everybody else's issues. Those requests, because you're the senator, Councilwoman Paulton, as well as Rep. Cochran, I tell people, you got, work with them and then be specific, so that way you don't have to listen through 3 hours of stuff you don't want to hear.
Exactly, and it's just everybody leaves frustrated because nothing appears to be accomplished. That's why I think everybody talking to the businesses, they like the bucket approach, as one of them called it. And let's if we keep things in their separate buckets, then these meetings, when they happen, the right people will be there, and you'll get some progress.
Yeah, you just don't want anybody,
bucketing up
subject matter there that we're not talking about. But in this case, I think the meeting, as some of the commitments that were made by department heads and the governor as well as mayor, it's moving along. Some of the relief that's been talked about, businesses as well as people in general, nobody wants to do alone. I don't blame them. We're still recovering from COVID. So there's grant programs in partnership that they've looked at with the state. Governor is able to move some funds around, hoping that there's buy-in within House and Senate. I know, as you heard yesterday, Senate President Kochi from Kauai that had suffered major losses during the Hiniki time. literally said, we got to be in it for the long haul, but you have the full commitment of the
exactly.
Senate
And you know what?
behind you.
To me, I mean, maybe I'm probably still the same way, but he went through a Niki. And he had the perspective
made it clear.
of, I mean, that until this, that was the largest disaster to hit Hawaii. And a lot of the things that we're looking at and facing down the road, they've already been through. So to have that kind of experience of somebody who's been through this kind of rebuilding, this rescue, healing, and rebuilding thing before is important. To avoid some of the things that perhaps that happened to them. That we like.
Yeah, and he's been a major part.
I'll have you weigh in on it. Was the office of to have a streamlined, separate office of permitting.
Yep.
Only for the permits that are pulled for the fire, because they did that in Kauai after Iniki, because all the other building permits stopped because everybody's working. The planning department's bogged down with just doing hurricane. So using FEMA money, they set up a separate office of permitting that only handled permitting for damaged structures. And so that's an idea he brought up that I think, perhaps, merits further discussion for Maui. Is a possible idea.
And, we're talking expediting. It's too bad we wait till something like this occurs and then we expedite, because just planning in general needs to be expedited. It needs to be fully staffed. People are waiting and have been waiting for a long time. So that has been discussed. Rent reliefs, mortgage reliefs, not just for business, but as well as homes. All of those things are on the table. It's a matter of crafting how those monies are executed and used, whether it be deferred or deferred or approved on some of these rent reliefs. It has to be crafted, and what division will do it. So that we await the final on the governor, but all of those stuff has been brought up.
Well, I'm glad he's working on it. But OCP, Office of Consumer Protection, hopefully will be a good place because they do landlord-tenant code right now, enforcement. But whether the office is big enough to handle that is a good point. But, the fact that I'm very glad to hear that, because that collapse is already happening, and so one of the things that has come up, and it affects your constituents in East Maui, is the fact that even though many businesses weren't impacted, they're survived, they're up and running, they lost their market. They're completely gone. I mean, and so in essence, even though they're intact and they're okay, they're damaged as well. What conversations have you been having with other stakeholders in your district and other of our colleagues, insofar as other Maui businesses that are affected economically, although they're physically intact?
So economically, first I'm going to just say the jobs. You take East Maui, a lot of them are dependent, as well as Lanai. Lanai has many people going back and forth via Lahaina. All of these areas are fully impacted, more so on the job. Whether or not the question is, do we stay here or do we move away? Because the calls and the emails we've been getting is, while we respect and we want the people and allow them the time to grieve, part of their process and healing process for many that I've talked to also in Lahaina is that please don't take our jobs away, but wanting to be respectful to support and help that. Tourism has been a huge driver. Parameters need to be set. There's mixed feelings on how tourism shall reopen. Again, that decision needs to be made at the governor's standpoint. I can tell you that much of the mixed reactions and feedback that we're getting is they want us to open back up tourism. And I can tell you, I've been back and forth to Maui, trying to work through a lot of the stuff going on, and bringing support bases. I see tourism. I was on in Kihei 2 days ago, and I see it coming back, not in the numbers that it was, but again, too, we got to keep in mind when we went through COVID. COVID taught us huge lessons that basically we had to start from ground zero again. Keep in mind that many of those business and people that suffered through COVID, a lot of jobs were lost. Many of them moved away, and of course, a lot of them went to Las Vegas. And and I had a conference there, and many of them said, "Lynn, I will never come back. I cannot come back because I sold my land and I cannot afford to ever buy it back. And regrets were there, but again, too, we at the state level have to provide opportunity. We have to make
sure
sure
do. I mean, we
that
have
the
to be
cost
there
of
to
living is
protect
there
them
for
and
the
that lack of
people.
it. And that's part of why, in my mind, the mortgage thing is so huge
Yep.
of an issue, because what's been proposed by the banks has been forbearance on the front end, which means we'll give you 3 months where you don't have to pay, but on the day one of the fourth month, you have to pay for all 3 months and month 4.
Yep.
And of course, that's
and
impossible.
that's not relief.
And people are proactively going to start putting their places up for sale because they don't want to be foreclosed on and they can't afford that. So what I'm hoping we can do is lobby both at the federal level, maybe with the Treasury Department as well as the governor, to do what they did during COVID and get the banks to put it on the tail or the back end of the note. So that forbearance on the front end, those 3 months, would be put on the back end, and therefore people would get the relief they need and not get hit with this 4 months all of a sudden of accelerated payment on their mortgage.
And working with our congressional delegation, I mean, they've been great. Again, too, there's so many pockets of funds, but then, it's to dig them and find them. I think our time trying to find those pockets and the people that know where those pockets are. Some of the other things that have been going on is, as you see the different funds being coming into Hawaii, I've always told people, I don't have a problem if we start to look at and be more, we got to get more creative. Funds that are here and many of the people that frequent Maui and Hawaii want to help. So, the challenge, as we've always said, and there's been challenges thrown out there where businesses have put up funds and challenges other businesses across the world to match those funds. People want to know that are donating, that their funds are going directly to the people that need the help.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that those funds get there, because we see it coming in, but there is oversight, and I hope people realize that oversight will look at where those funds went, who received them, and how they were dispersed, because there needs to be transparency, and we need to make sure they get the funds that are needed for the specific ask of the people of Maui. And, I hope that people realize that the funds that they're contributing is going exactly where it's going.
Well, that's at the very beginning. That's why I on my own, made Hawaii Community Foundation the dump bucket for all donations, because they're a foundation. They're held to a fiduciary duty, both as a nonprofit under the Charitable Assets Division, but also as a foundation. There's other fiduciary duties for accounting of money. They work with other nonprofits on the island. They have relationships to get money out, but it's along those lines, because we don't have a truth in lending, or a truth in giving act in Hawaii. There have been bills in the past, as I discussed with our colleague, that we put in for truth in gift giving, but unfortunately none of them passed. And so, you get a lot of these entities are saying, please donate, but we don't know if the money, how much of it, if any of it, is getting to the actual people, the victims of the fire.
And that's something we got to look at even on legislation. So I think, a lot of the stuff that was brought up, and like you said, there'll be many, many more meetings with the community of specificity of what they want. Some of those that were there basically trying to see what is needed, might have to be legislated. And, we hope that we get buy-in from the House, House leadership as well, because you and I know that stuff don't happen unless there's both sides buy-in, and of course, the governor having to make sure that it's been signed and approved. Yeah. So, listening to the people of Maui, Lahaina, even up country, people need help, and, we need to be boots on the ground. But again, we got to take direction from you, Angus, Rep. Cochran, Councilman Polton, that's your guys' district, with respect to your constituents and the people of Lahaina, basically seeing what is needed.
Well, you guys coming out there and talking with everybody, hearing it from yourself, or what I'm saying and what they're saying, it means the world to me and them, because, they are getting listened to, and they're getting straight answers. And what, like yesterday, we're being blunt, just straight, I mean, yes, this is what we do. No, this is what we can't do, and this is what we're having to work on. Case in point with the request for business rent relief. It's like we acknowledge the need. It's critical. However, it's something that we are still working on. But instead of giving a hey, it's going to happen right away, and all these great things. It's a realistic assessment, so they know. I mean, so the business owners know, and don't operate.
And I think even with that, Angus, even with that, right?
Needed, they can be skew the reality of the situation, and that kind of goes into the point. And you are the chair of the visitor, the tourism committee in the Senate. Has been the balance between the cleanup, especially the hazardous materials, and trying to bring people back for, insofar as restarting the visitor industry. I mean, how much of a concern do you think the hazardous materials removal portion will pose insofar as trying to not only bring back, if the visitors were to come back, but also just in general, because they're talking about 100,000 dump trucks potentially of hazardous waste that have to be trucked out of the area minimum. I mean, there's going to be a lot of logistical issues with this. Don't you agree? Or how do you see this playing out with the first step of the hazardous cleanup?
That is a long road of cleanup. You and I know, most of the people in Lahaina know, all of the ash and stuff that is there. One is making sure, again, we secure the remains of our loved ones first and foremost, but safety issues, hazardous material.
We have issues.
One of the worst.
Anthropologists that we're working had an issue happen to them. Yep. I mean, so there's unexpected things happening along the way already. And so I think what I've been trying to say is, like, this, even FEMA has said this, they've never dealt with a disaster like this ever in the history of the agency. This is a brand new thing completely. It's like 9/11 meets Katrina meets something else. And so as a result, there's a lot of things that are going on which have never been, I guess, tackled in a major disaster before that are creating all. So I think what it is, it shows that while there's trying to be an optimism for some of the timelines, that they're very rough and that things could happen. And this recovery, to your point, Senator, is going to be a lot longer and harder than people realize, especially those from outside of Maui.
Senator DeCoite, this is
Tom.
Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. Good morning. I did have a question for you that people have been asking, not just in Lahaina, but also in Kihei, and that is, what are your thoughts on moving the utilities underground so that we're not going to have this problem of poles falling down and sparking wires? Has there been any discussion about perhaps getting some FEMA infrastructure money or other funds to move the utilities underground?
So as you know, the president put out funding that they're wanting to put utilities under the ground. Sorry, about $95 million. What's it? Again, we got to keep in mind this district of impacts of sea level rise can play a huge role. Placement of it. We've had other areas where they've done utilities underground. Hawaii has been an area of a lot of cultural significance. Yeah. So placement of that and sea level rise, environmental issues has to be considered on underground utilities. For me, after what's happened in Lahaina, you would think that it would be good to put them underground, but you got to look at both sides.
And there's already fiber underground, so on the utilities, you already have fiber underground, so there's no water table type of issues at all. You just lay it next to the shielded conduit underground next to the fiber. But you do bring up a good point, Senator DeCoite, is that there's areas like that where maybe if we focus in on that, where it's been proven over and over again, these incidents keep happening, that, when we look at how to spend these funds insofar as what to underground first, I mean, do you think that should be the strategy? Look at those areas where it's been demonstrated there's been issues before and then work your way out from then depending on the funding? Or how do you see the public infrastructure funding rolling out with the undergrounding issue?
Well, when it comes to public infrastructure, yeah, I mean, I'll just say it. Look at the animal of the rail. You secure this, you think it's a great idea, and again, we have our challenges while we're doing it above ground, even while trying to get the pylons down into sea level rise areas. So we got to learn to plan better. I think our planning needs to be done in a way that reflects the community as well, because you have generations and generations of family. You have cultural significance in Lahaina. But, I've seen fiber break, and we lost internet, phone connections, as some of those fibers are out in the ocean. You know what it's going to take to dig that thing up, as well as to pinpoint. I mean, everything is computerized, but again, everything has its fallback, yeah, and and we should consider that as well. But within the past years, the winds and weather has been huge.
Because I've introduced undergrounding bills for Lahaina in the past that didn't move. So I'm hoping with the FEMA money coming in and Senator Schatz's idea of using the opportunity to make a modern infrastructure for Lahaina before the rebuild. Because let's face it, Lahaina, God bless this beautiful town. I mean, it's been layers of funky add-ons since the last Kaula fire, right? When was that? The 1920s or 30s that happened? And a lot of people don't know we had a Kaula fire that happened that basically burned Lahaina town back then. The difference was that Lahaina town was all wooden buildings, small stores, plantation town. It wasn't what it was today. But to your point,
I think that's what makes Lahaina Lahaina.
Over the years, but there's a huge cultural thing that needs to be looked at. I appreciate you bringing that up because that is something that needs to be examined insofar as any underground strategy goes. One of the things, Senator DeCoite, again, as a visitor person, has been the balance of, okay, you have hazardous materials, dust and such could impact any kind of return to a visitor industry. How do you see with HTA in particular being insofar as educating people that while West Maui is grieving and has suffered immense damage as Lahaina, that the rest of Maui is fine and is open? How does that message get out, or do you think that message is getting out insofar as the rest of the island is concerned?
I think for HTA, they need one clear message. I think those that are part of the visitor industry should latch on so that there's no confusion of the message coming out of the HTA site and latch on as businesses, because there are many that want to see tourism open, but people that are looking towards wanting to come first want to be respectful, and they want to know that when they're coming, what is open. And we got to message it. So for HTA, they need to message it in a way that these are the areas that is open after realizing what the community wants, number one. Two is where is open and what businesses are listed. And three is making sure that message is please continue to be respectful. Because you and I know, even when we go into places, you still get people that like go mahaoi. I mean,
and that's the big concern.
They want to go and they say, I want to be there. But the message needs to be, please be respectful and stay out of those areas, if that's what the people want. We want you to stay out of this area. So there has to be a working relationship. I'm proud to say that HTA has gone down on the front line, have met with many people. They were also there yesterday as part of being invited at the LAC. So that's huge.
It's very
so
huge.
They need to message that clear and concise.
It's so huge, I can't even tell you. And but one of the things that's been discussed is like any return to tourism has to be a very slow trickle, and that there should be a way to look at and identify what's been nicknamed voluntourism, or trying to encourage the kinds of visitors that are not only culturally respectful of the town, but actually want to give back somehow while they're here and be a part of a solution and not be seen as somebody coming in and having a party while everybody else's lives have been ruined. Do you think that might be a strategy to look at insofar as slowly trying to bring back visitors, trying to get those kinds of visitors to come in first so the locals understand that these kinds of visitors want to give back and not trying to, as you said before, be disrespectful? Do you think that's an idea worth exploring? How do you see some kind of return happening insofar as the tensions you mentioned with the visitors?
So I'm hoping if the messaging is that clear, that tourists will be responsible. Having seen that this is being televised around the world of what happened to Lahaina, as well as upcountry Maui. But you and I know, once you open a gate, it becomes now the kuleana of many of us to then educate them, because you still have them, even though there is a sign says do not enter. Somehow they jump over the gate or they jump over areas.
There was a bill like that I think you put in last.
Yeah, so we got to help with the education process. So like for us, for me, I'm Molokai, I got a lot of friends that do come and visit, and they said, I want to go over there. And I said, you can read the sign. It says no trespassing. There's a reason why you don't go there. Well, the state can only do so much, and HTA can message. It is those of us that have lived there for generations also to make sure as our friends come in, we teach them so that they teach others, And it has to be a group effort. I think that way we get responsible people coming. That you go and get the slap on the hand and say, hey, do not do that. Respect that area. And we need that, like when it was back in the day, being raised by your grandparents. You would get it if you didn't listen. And, by the way, auntie and uncle on the other side of the island would give you cracks. Before you get home, where you get more cracks.
I was a recipient of a few of those back in the day.
And that's what we got to help that.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
We have to help that messaging.
Senator,
I think then we'll have responsible tourism.
Senator DeCoite, I do have a follow-up question for you. If we look at the way to get the message out, and you do a great job working with the departments on this, is there any plans to pull together the travel writers and get them that message out? That because when people say Maui, I know everybody, we got calls when things were going on, and they don't know West Maui from Upcountry Maui or anything. They just know Maui. So if they hear Maui, they think Maui's closed as opposed to Lahaina or what have you.
That happened on the champion, the LSUF at Florida State game on televised nationally, internationally the other day. The commentators were talking about how Maui's great, how they and their families all went there, the waterfalls, and the this and the all the different places, and then they finished it by saying it's just so bad that the whole island's been destroyed by fires like that. I'm like, okay, that was sent out across the world, and it helps to play down on the perception that all of Maui was destroyed by the fires.
I was just wondering,
that to me, the messaging HTA needs to be focusing on.
Right. Are there any plans that you might be aware of, Senator DeCoite, in which HTA is reaching out to the travel writers to get this message out? So if they're going to do articles about, post-fire, they talk about Maui being open. Any discussion on that?
I haven't heard any discussion on that, but since you bring that up, because I'm actually headed into the convention center today to meet with some of them, I'm going to actually ask that question, because I think that's one way to get that message, along with even getting that message clear right through media. Stuff like this. If it comes where the state steps up under HC and says, this is the message we have, bring the media, because the media can be your friend sometimes.
Right.
And sometimes they cannot be your friend, and then the wrong narrative comes out because of lack of communication. We need to communicate so that way the world understands, are we on the same page or are we not on the same page? So I think, being able to have HC also reach out to the travel writers, I'm sure they probably have, but I don't know that for sure, and I'm going to ask today when I meet up with them.
Well, that's a whole community of writers that write for these international magazines and columns and what have you. And if we can mobilize them to deliver our message, it doesn't cost us any money, and also brings people over who can then write about their experience afterwards.
One real quick question, and I'll throw this out there, Senator DeCoite, is that one of the things that happened in the Kauai experience was they needed thousands and thousands of construction workers, contractors, everything else, way more than the local companies, obviously, in the state. And meant, they had all of these people coming in from all over to provide these needed services, but they ended up having to stay in the hotels, and many of them were being paid with federal monies. If the visitor industry in West Maui, because of the cleanup and such, isn't able to stand up, do you think that might be an idea for the hotels, is to house all of these potentially thousands of workers that are going to be coming in as part of this federally funded massive cleanup and rebuild effort? Or if not, how do we see housing all of these workers that are going to be coming in from all over the place to do this essential heavy work?
So of course, as you know, a hotel on the west side can run you from $500 to $1,000-something. Imagine housing your construction workers in there and see what that housing will cost then. I've yet to see a model or some sort of what the example will be to house these construction workers. What I do know is that organizations like CNHA, working in partnership with other people as well as the unions, is how do we train the construction workers of residents that live here. I know there'll be training programs to get them prepped and ready for the future build out. And for those that wanting to change professions or that was once in the hotel that wanting to be a construction worker, truck driver, which you're going to need a lot of truck drivers. I know there'll be CDL programs to CNHA that they've done. Again, CNHA has said this on opening on Monday with Hugh Lewis, is that this facility not just takes in Hawaiian people, but non-Hawaiians as well. We're here to help everybody. So if you ever have the opportunity, go in, check out some of the stuff that they have going on. That place has been staffed by people that have been impacted and affected in Lahaina as well as upcountry Kula. And it is amazing, the outreach and the foresight of what they're thinking coming down the road. So I say we use our residents that want to get involved with construction. You're going to need plumbing, you're going to need electrical. Job creation is going to be huge.
We are, but we're going to need thousands of
training.
People with the training now. And that's the kind of the challenge. And so logistically speaking, if we already had a housing situation on West Maui. We already have all these displaced people that are potentially going to, with FEMA, money's going to move into, more of a long-term rental kind of situation. But then the question becomes, do we do what Kauai did and look at the hotel rooms, which aren't being filled, as a potential place for the construction workers? And if not, where do we put them all? Because they're going to be, Senate President Kochi even brought up how thousands of workers came in because Kauai needed them, and they all go through the federal contracting portal, so you really can't stop the feds and the Army Corps of Engineers from procuring as many entities as they can. So I throw that out only because that conversation is starting to happen. That's something that we, I think, with the community kind of,
at the end of the
waves
day,
of tsunami, right? The tsunami waves are coming. They're coming. So it's kind of like we better size them up now before they hit us on the head, right?
Yeah, and consideration. Well, a lot of those issues will be coming up. It's the funding mechanism. I will tell you this: you and I know, as much as we like to say this is coming, that is coming. We got to see it to believe it. At the end of the day, the promise of all resources by the president. We want to make sure that is that happens. So, our congressional delegation that has constantly been on the president's heels is that, okay, funding. We need the funding now. What other hoops will the island and the community have to jump through to get the necessary funding needed? And again, even with all these construction workers, I'm glad there's a mechanism for the training to help those that want to have some work in that field.
Because it's going to be, there's going to be,
said it, hire local. They want local
long-term
hires.
Thing that where you're going to need to have future, as the first wave decreases and the cleanup and all of that, which is funded through FEMA monies, steps back, we're going to need to have this local workforce to step in and do, especially when it comes to rebuilding, individual homes and businesses and such.
Senator DeCoite, can you used an acronym CNHA? Can you let our listeners know what that is?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. The CEO is Kuhio Lewis. Amazing young man that has taken that organization to heights and limits that have done so much for Native Hawaiians as well as communities at large. He has a great foresight, great mind of, looking at things in a way and partnering with many different people and organizations that have extended out many of the needs of the people in the community. So
and how do you see them being involved in the rebuilding of Lahaina?
I see them being involved because they do a lot of training. They provide a lot of training through their organization. They work with different nonprofits as well, and private partners to look at and assess the area of what the needs will be coming down, and then they put these trainings on to help them. Right now, they're just doing intake to help people just learning how to fill out forms, seeing what other options that is there. And literally, I think the biggest one is bringing in these partners on the subject matter issue. Yeah, they're allowed, or should I say, they're able to retain individuals that can come and help others through times of need or just different subject matters in general. So
and
that's how I see it.
Very quickly, we have about 5 minutes left, but very quickly, are there any plans to cap the rate that the hotels are charging for their rooms since they're receiving federal funds and that kind of thing? Is there any discussion on that to keep the cost down, to cap what they can be charging?
There's been talk about it. Whether or not that will be done is a discussion that I'm looking towards having based on some of the questions that were asked yesterday in Maui. You know, that taps and price gouging are other areas that we're being faced with, because while we have that under control on the price gouging in Hawaii, it's the imports coming in from mainland that has taken advantage of the situation. And in that case, the governor has no control, but I think this is an outreach for the president to stop the price gouging on outside imports to Hawaii.
We definitely got an outreach on that. That's occurring. And one of the problems we had, though, even though prices weren't going up locally because of the gouging, they were hyperinflated before the fire. So when the stores opened up, you could spend $9 for a pint of half and half, which was the price before because of all of the wealthy visitors that were obviously, able to pay that kind of prices. So one of the things that have come up is people were dipping into their savings when the stores first opened up, but they were paying an arm and a leg. So how do we potentially try to make prices more reasonable for people, given that they were so high to begin with in the affected area?
Well, I think that will be a challenge, and it's an economic challenge. But from what I'm hearing from both of you and in the community is, everyone's going to pitch in and do their part, and that may mean reducing profit somewhat in order to serve the community a little bit better.
I think that's the overall message, that the community, again, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and the community goes first. I think the meeting, which again is first of many on many different groups and subjects, with Senator DeCoite and our colleagues being there, and the governor and everybody else, shows that that's a thing that we're serious about, and ensuring that what they are saying is what is being answered and what we're trying to do insofar as securing things. But I think there's also what was displayed as a general realization that there is still different views, very strong views about where to go and how to get there, but more importantly, that there's a lot of unknowns.
Well, we have about 2 minutes. We have about 2 minutes left in this segment.
Of mice and people, right?
We have about 2 minutes left in this segment before we move on. Senators, are there any final words you might have?
I just want to say, again, our thoughts and prayers to the people of Maui. And that, we're here for you. Our commitment on behalf of the Senate, myself and our colleagues and Senate President Kochi, we're in it for the long haul, and whatever support that we can give to the people, we'll continue to do that, as well as interact. If the community chooses that they want us to come in and have more conversation and communication with them, again, some people do not want to sit through a long meeting. So if they want to have separate meetings set up with a group or an organization that will be specific to those questions, we're more than happy to help get those people that can answer those questions, because we know everybody's busy and they want direct answers. Like I said yesterday, some of the answers you might not like it, but I don't want to lie to you. I want to be truthful as best I can, and to also have solutions on ideas that we can look at to help better the process of us helping to support, legislate, bring in resources, that type of stuff. But we do not want to at any time feel that we're pushing ourselves as government on the community. It's okay to reach out, as we were reaching out and telling people, tell us what you want so that we can craft it to your specificity, not for us to tell you what we want. Because this is about you. This is about that community, their rebuild, where they want to be, how they want to move forward. It cannot come from us as government. They need to know what they want, and we can help with that and with the communication. So I want to say thank you. Angus, is always, our hearts, our thoughts and prayers and our support will always be there for you and your constituents in Lahaina. And thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator DeCoite, for being here. Thank you for everything you've been doing since the beginning up until now. I know I greatly appreciate you and our Senate colleagues. I mean, it's by working together that we're able to bring all these resources to the community and reassure the community that they are the leaders of this effort. And we're just here to support them as they want to be wished and give them the straight dope. So again, thank you so much for everything you're doing, Senator. I greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And again, my thoughts and prayers go out to the families. You know, we must put them first and foremost in any conversation moving forward.
Thank you. We have about a minute or so left in the program. Senator, would you like to tell the audience how they can contact your staff if they have questions or comments or issues regarding West Maui? How
Yes,
can they
I
contact
sure
you?
will. I want to thank my amazing staff who've been putting in, along with Senator DeCoite staff and others who've been putting in hours and hours and hours, weekends and evenings, both for the food drive and helping. So mahalo to them. If you're having issues, questions, concerns, please reach out to our office, 808-586-6070. My amazing executive assistants, Wendy Wilson and Beth McKenzie, are there to help you. Any questions concerned with forms, FEMA, insurance, follow-up things perhaps that were discussed, clarifications, please give us a call. Email send McKelvey, one word, at capitaltol.hawaii spelled out .gov. And my Instagram, Facebook, where we post updates on different services, community meetings, and resources at Send McKelvey for both Facebook and Instagram.
And be sure to tune in to Capital Connection every Wednesday at 7 a.m. right here on KAOI 1110 and its affiliated FM stations, including 95.1 FM, reaching all of West Maui. Aloha.